Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So, Venerable Sangha and Salis and dear Dhamma friends. So today we'll resume our discussion on the Paṭṭhāna. So uh, last week, what we did in our opening class was we discussed about a little bit about what is Abhidhamma and what is Paṭṭhāna and the 7 treatises of Abhidhamma, things like that, and some basic details on the structure of the Paṭṭhāna and the scope of our study as well. So so we will be continuing with the details from today onwards. So one thing which I missed out on the last day to explain is that so now we know that there are 7 books, 7 treatises for Abhidhamma Pitaka. So, and in these 7, there are 4 special books, special treatises, right? Which we have to learn in separate methods. Like each of them have separate methods, so we have to learn them separately. Like they are distinct from each other, these methods. So what are those methods? What are those books? Number 1 is the Dhammasan. Second one is Dhātukatha, which some of y'all have learned already with me. And the third one is Yamaka. And the fourth one is the Paṭṭhāna, which we are learning at the moment. So why these 4 are special? Because each of them have distinctive methods, right? To learn them, right? The method of learning each of them are not the same. There is the reason. So Dhammasangani and Vibhanga, when we look at these 2 treatises, Vibhanga is we can say that Vibhanga is an extension of Dhammasangani. That means the Dhammas which I explained in the Dhammasangani is explained in more detail, much detail in the Vibhanga. So we can say this is like it's an extension of the Vibhanga. So Dhātukatha, if you have learned already with me or any other teacher, then it's a different method, right? And for Yamaka and Paṭṭhāna, it has the same, it has different methods which are distinct. And Puggala Paññatti and Kathavattu, for Puggala Paññatti especially, it's like a sutta, it's like a long sutta. And Kathavattu also, it has the characteristics of suttas, and some of the suttas which are related to certain points which were discussed during the period of the third Dhammasangayana. So we have to learn all these 4 in different ways, distinct methods. So when we are learning these 4 books, there is another special thing that we need to know on how we are learning them. It's that when it comes to these 4 books, or rather 5 books including Vibhanga, there is something called, in Pali it's called Sarupa Kathana, call it. In Pali it's called, sometimes it's called as Abhidheya Kathana. So what it means is that, like, say for a sutta, we can translate from Pali to whatever the language and directly understand the meaning of it, like translating from one language from Pali, and from Pali, if you translate it to a particular language, then you can learn it directly by understanding the meaning of it. But when it comes to Abhidhamma, we know it's the Abhidhamma Desana. It's on the ultimate realities. So when we are learning these books, we have to learn the just translating the Pali will not serve the purpose, will not understand the Dhamma properly, because like translating the meaning will not give you the full understanding, the comprehension on the Dhamma. So in addition to the meaning from the Pali, the ultimate realities which are associated for each of those meanings are explained. So that is called in the commentaries, sub-commentaries, these two words are given, called as Sarupa Katana. Katana means expressing, telling. Sarupa means what is the Dhammas, what are Dhammas which are inherent for a particular context, specific for a particular context, and which is explained in a particular passage, something like that. So Abhidhamma Katana also have the same meaning in terms of in Abhidhamma. So in really Abhidhamma Katana is applicable in some other areas in Dhamma as well, but in the Abhidhamma, Sarupa Katana means the explanation of the ultimate realities for a particular passage, or a particular phrase, or a particular maybe it can come for a it may be applicable for a single word itself. So that is essential in learning the especially these 4 books and some parts of the Vibhanga as well. Yes. So so in the Burmese tradition, in the Burmese Sayadaws, from ancient times, they did a lot of translations to the Dhamma books. So one type of translation that they did for the entire Pitaka and the entire Tipitaka, for the commentaries and the sub-commentaries, is a word-by-word translation. They have done it like you have the Pali word and the Burmese meaning from it. So those books are called the Nissaya books. Nissaya books. There are similar kinds of books in Sri Lanka also, but not for the entire Pali commentaries and the sub-commentaries. But so what's so special about these Nissaya books? It's a word-by-word translation. And so how this Nissaya is related to the Abhidhamma is that for these books, right, for these Abhidhamma books, Burmese Sayadaws, they have compiled Nissaya books, which includes the word-by-word translation, and in addition to the word-by-word, have the ultimate realities. So the Paramata Dhammas. So this is how these books, with what we are doing, what we will be learning in our course, is some details from the Nissaya, like how to get the ultimate realities for certain explanations in Paṭṭhāna, how to derive them. So this is the origin really, which is from the Burmese tradition, and then based on that we will be learning these ultimate realities. Yes. So I mentioned these facts because I believe that it's very important for us to know about our literature, how it is connected to what we are doing. So that's why I really intended to share these details to you. So moving into our lesson. So last week we discussed about these 3 things, right? Paccaya, paccayuppanna, paccayasati, conditioning state, conditioned state, and the conditioning force. We discuss about it, what it means. And from today, we will be learning the paccayuddesa, the paccayuddesa and paccayaniddesa, and also we'll connect it with the 7th chapter of the Kusalattika. So we'll be learning all these things combined. So in the last week, we discussed that there are 9 condition groups and 56 conditions starting from the object Arammana group. But we will be starting from the Sahajāta group, connaissance condition group. Right? So we'll be starting from that, and we'll be starting from Hetu, the first condition from the connaissance small subgroup, right? So in connaissance condition, there are three subgroups: connaissance small group, connaissance medium group, and connaissance large group. So we'll be starting from here, from the small group, Hetu Paccaya. Okay, so first we'll start from the Hetu paccayuddesa and Hetu paccayaniddesa. So Hetu, okay, you'll look at the Pali also, right? We already have the details in the note, which is prepared by the Sayadaw. But as I mentioned you earlier in the last week, it's important that we know where this Dhamma is included in the Pali itself, right? So in the Paṭṭhāna Pali, in the first volume, you have the paccayuddesa. So in the paccayuddesa, we know it's a list of topics which is explained, which is given, listed down. So the first one which is expounded by Buddha is Hetu Paccayo, right? Which we see in the paccayuddesa, and in the paccayaniddesa, right? So in the paccayaniddesa, you have this Pali, Hetu Paccayoti, Hetu Sampayuttakanang Dhammanang, Tan Samutthānānaṁ ca Rūpānaṁ, Hetu Paccayana Paccayo. First, we will be learning these two combined. Okay. So we will move into the note which is compiled by the Sayadaw. So here, like Sayadaw has included the Paccaya-niddesa. So in the Niddesa, Sayadaw has included this Pali, Hetu Paccayoti, Hetu Sampayuttakanang Dhammanang, Tan Samutthānānaṁ ca Rūpānaṁ, Hetu Paccayana Paccayo. Right, so we have the Pali here. So yeah, so here we see, right, this Hetu Paccayoti means, the meaning is the root conditions is, right? That's the meaning. And Hetu means the roots are. Paccayo, Hetu Sampayuttakanam Dhammanam Tan Samutthānānaṁ ca Rūpānaṁ means related to the states which are associated with root and the matter produced thereby. And we have these statements. Finally, the Paccaya Sati, Hetu Paccayana Paccayo, by the force of root condition. So last week we learned that there are conditioning states, conditioned state, and the conditioning forces, right? So this Paccaya is the conditioning states, right? This is the conditioning states. And here, the paccayuppanna, it's the conditioned states. So Paccaya Sati is the conditioning force, right? So what happened is that there is a set of dhammas, ultimate realities called roots, and these roots, they support by the force of root condition to the states which they are associated. Hetu Sampayuttakana. Sampayuttakana means dhammas which are associated, right, together in the same mind moment, and also the matter, right, the rupas which are produced by that roots itself, right? So that's the meaning of it. Right. So now we will move into the ultimate realities which are associated, which are applicable here in this Pali. So Hetu, for Hetu, we know there are 6 roots, right? Loba, dosa, moha, aloba, adosa, amoha. So these 6, right, are called Hetu. And then, so for the states which are associated with roots, which means the consciousness which are associated with the roots, right? Rooted consciousness, right? So that's why it is given as 71 rooted consciousness and 52 mental factors excluding delusion from 2 delusion rooted consciousness. And then we have the rooted mind produced matter, rooted rebirth karma produced matter. So explaining on these 52 mental factors excluding delusion from 2 delusion rooted consciousness. So we know when these 6 roots, when they arise, so these 6 roots, they support by the force of root condition to these 71 rooted consciousness. And there are 52 mental factors are well, because we know this rooted consciousness, these roots, they are applicable in both wholesome, unwholesome, functional, and resultant consciousness. Right? So that's the reason that the 52 mental factors are present. And here we have 2 dhammas are excluded here, right? Excluding delusion from delusion-rooted consciousness. So if you take an example from a consciousness associated with greed, right? So if a consciousness is associated with greed, in that consciousness, there are 2 roots, right? What are those 2 roots? It's the lobha and also moha, right? So if it is associated with hatred, then we'll have the dosa and moha, those 2. So, but what happens with the delusion-rooted consciousness, the mohamula chittas, what happens is that in those consciousness, right? So moha, what do you call? I'll write in English. In delusion-rooted consciousness, it has only one root, which is the moha, right? So we need to know this thing. So in the greed-rooted consciousness, lobha mula chitta, so this lobha and moha, they supported all the other dhammas, associated dhammas, right? Which is the consciousness itself and the other mental factors, right? And the other mental factors, right? Other mental factors. So here, what happened is that, so when each of these root is supporting to the associated dhammas, then the lobha, if you take one root, the lobha, it will support the moha. And the moha will support the lobha, So it works in that way, right? So that is the case with the greed-rooted consciousness, the consciousness rooted with greed, right? So, but in the case, right? So I mean, so if the lobha will also support the other mental factors, right? Other mental factors. But in the case of the moha, in the case of the delusion, consciousness rooted with delusion, so moha will be the delusion. No, the pen is not working. Okay, so So in this consciousness, only the moha is present, and it will be supporting all the other mental factors, right? All the other mental factors. But but it will not be supported, the moha will not be supported by any other root, because the only root which is applicable, which is there, is the moha itself, delusion itself. So there is no other root. So that's why these two delusion from two delusion rooted consciousness are excluded here, right? That is the reason, which is the reason for that to be excluded, right? But if it's the case with the greed rooted consciousness and any other consciousness which is associated with two or more than two roots, then like the root itself, any root becomes the conditioning state and conditioned state both. But with the case of the delusion root consciousness, the conditioning state of delusion becomes only the conditioning state. It will not become a conditioned state, right? So that's why it's excluded here. And then we have the root mind produced matter. We know the chittaja rupa, which arises together together with the consciousness itself, right? And then we have the root rebirth karma produced matter, rooted rebirth karma produced matter, which means when the rebirth is taking place, if it is if the rebirth is either a two-rooted consciousness, the rebirth consciousness is a two-rooted consciousness or a three-rooted consciousness, then it will have a rooted rebirth karma produced matter, right? Anyway, I mean all the consciousness which arises in the planes where we have the five aggregates will have karma produced matter, of course. But if it is if the rebirth consciousness is two-rooted or three-rooted, then it will have rooted rebirth karma produced matter, right? So the name is given as rooted here for those karma produced matter. Right. Okay. So now we move into the next one, which is the paccaya-satti, the conditioning force. In Pali, it's given as Hetu paccayena paccayo. So so the translation is by the force of root condition. What I mentioned last week was it's relatively easy to understand the conditioning states and the conditioned states, but it's difficult to understand the conditioning force, the paccaya-satti, right? So yes, it's given as, the translation is given as by the force of root condition. But what we need to understand here, the root condition. When it comes to the root condition, we have to understand the paccaya-satti, right? So in the commentaries, the simile which is given to explain here, the root condition is as if a tree which has a root, right? Which has a root, and that root support the tree, right? Support the tree to stand firm, right? To stand firm, that root support. So like that, these dhammas, which are given as roots, the lobha, dosa, moha, and alobha, adosa, amoha, they support these associated states and also the matter which are produced by these roots to be strong, to stand strong, to make it kind of have a lot of strength, like that, right? So the simile is that as a tree that it is, which has roots, We know that there are certain, in the commentary also it's given this, there are things like certain forms of plants which grow on top of water, right? So these kind of uh, these kind of plants, they when there is a wind or the water, when they are swept, when there's the wind and water, they will be moving here and there. It will not have they will not be firm, they will not be established in a proper place. But the trees which have roots, and when they have strong roots, they will be firm. So like this, these dhammas which are given as roots, they support their associated states and the matter produced. Okay, so that's what Sahajāta has given here in this slide, right? It can be compared with roots of a tree, right? Okay, so here in this, there is a list of 12 conditions given here, but we will not be discussing them right at the moment. We'll be discussing them later in our Dhamma talks. For the time being, we will just ignore this part. We'll be learning it later on, right? So just for the meantime, we'll just keep in mind that it's just a root condition which is applicable here, and just ignore this part. We'll be learning about in detail later on. Right. So now we discussed the paccayuddesa and the paccayaniddesa. Right? We discussed this paccayuddesa and paccayaniddesa. So, but our main objective in this Dhamma talk series is to discuss about the Kusalattika Paṭṭhāna, right? So in the Kusalattika Paṭṭhāna, last week we mentioned that we'll be learning these 7 chapters, right? So 7 chapters will be starting from the investigation chapter, the Pañhāvara, and in Pañhāvara, there are two subtopics, 2 subsections called Vibhangavara and Sankhya-vara, the classification chapter and the enumeration chapter. And now we are going to go to that section as well, which are the content which is related to the Hetu Paccaya. Right. So so back to the Pali again, right? We need to know where this Pali comes, right? So paccayuddesa and paccayaniddesa is done for the Hetu, and right. So after that we have the Pucchavaro, which consists of the questions, and the Kusalattika. It's quite long. Right? All these subtopics are included here. So we'll be learning the 7th chapter, right? Which is the Pañhāvara, right? So in the Pañhāvara, the investigation chapter, there are right. So there are four subdivisions. I thought it's not included here, right? Yeah. So there are 4 divisions here, right? The Paccaya-nuloma, the positive method. First, we'll be learning this Paccaya-nuloma, right here. That's what we see here. Paccaya-nuloma is the positive method. And from the positive method, we have the Vibhangavara, the classification chapter, right? We'll be learning this one. Okay, so yeah, so in the Hetu Paccaya, right? So this is the Pali, Kusalo Dhammo, Kusalasa Dhammasa, etc. We have the Hetu Paccaya here. So what I'm going to do here is that I'll be using the translation which is included in the note, the book, which I already shared with you. So I will be reading the Pali and the translation for the to understand it, right? So okay, so here's the Pali and the translation for English and the Chinese translation. The Pali, this is for the Hetu Paccaya. The Pali is given as Kusalo Dhammo Kusalasa Dhammasa Hetu Paccayena Paccayo Kusala Hetu Sampayuttakanam Khandhanam Hetu Paccayena Paccayo, like this, right? So Kusalo Dhammo means the wholesome phenomena. Kusalasa Dhammasa means to the wholesome phenomena, right? So we have used the word support to indicate it. And Hetu Paccayena Paccayo means through the force of root conditioning, right? So this is the first sentence. In the second sentence, there is the explanation. Kusala Hetu Sampayuttakanam Khandhanam Hetu Paccayena Paccayo. So Kusala Hetu, this is the detailed explanation from the first sentence. The wholesome root phenomena, that's what the meaning of the Kusala Hetu. Sampayuttakanam Khandhanam means support to the associated aggregates. Hetu Paccayena Paccayo means through the force of root conditioning. Right. Now we move into the second sentence, which is Kusalo Dhammo Abhyakatassa Dhammasa Hetu Paccayena Paccayo Kusala Hetu Chitta Samuttananam Rupanam Hetu Paccayena Paccayo. So here is Kusalo Dhammo, the wholesome phenomena. Abhyakatassa Dhammasa means the support to the indeterminate phenomena. Hetu Paccayena Paccayo means through the force of root conditioning. And the next one, the explanation sentence is Kusala Hetu, the wholesome root phenomena. Chitta Samuttananam Rupanam, support to the mind produced matter. Hetu Paccayena Paccayo means through the force of root conditioning. Right. So in the third one, it is Kusalo Dhammo Kusalasya Abhyagatasya Dhammasa Hetu Paccayena Paccayo. So here what is there is that it's the combination of the first two. Right? The first one was Kusalo Dhammo Kusalasya, the wholesome phenomena supporting the wholesome phenomena. The second one was Kusalo Dhammo Abhyagatasya Dhammasa, the wholesome phenomena supporting the indeterminate phenomena. In the third one, it's a combination of both. So it is Kusalo Dhammo Kusalasya Abhyagatasya Dhammasa Hetu Paccayena Paccayo. Wholesome phenomena support to both wholesome and indeterminate phenomena through the force of root conditioning. Right. So in the explanation sentence, both are included, combined. Kusala Hetu Sampayuttakanam Khandhanam Chitta Samuttananam Rupanam Hetu Paccayena Paccayo. Kusala Hetu means the wholesome root phenomena. Sampayuttakanam Khandhanam means support to the associated aggregates. Chitta Samuttananam Rupanam means the mind produced matter. Hetu Paccayena Paccayo means through the force of root conditioning. Yes. So we discussed the first three, right? First three. And the fourth one, the fifth one, and the sixth one is for the akusala, for the unwholesome phenomena. So the only difference from of the fourth, fifth, and the sixth is from the term kusala becoming akusala. Right? So that's the difference. I mean, we are just learning the Pali and the translation. That's it, right? Later we'll be learning the ultimate realities, right? Right. So the seventh one, right? For the seventh one, it's given as the terms, it has changed, the starting term. It starts with abhyakato dhammo, abhyakatassa dhammassa, hetu paccayena paccayo, vipaka abhyakata, kiriya abhyakata hetu, sampayuttakānaṁ kandānaṁ, citta samuttānaṁ ca rūpānaṁ, hetu paccayena paccayo. So here it's the abhyakato dhammo, right? It's the indeterminate phenomena, support to the indeterminate phenomena through the force of root conditioning, right? So then there's a breakdown here. So vipakabhyakata kiriyabhyakata hetu means the resultant indeterminate roots. We'll be discussing them out later, right, in detail. And kiriyabhyakata is the functional indeterminate roots, support to the associated aggregates, sampayuttakānaṁ kandānaṁ, support to the associated aggregates, and citta samuttānaṁ ca rūpānaṁ, the mind produce matter through the force of root condition. Oh, there is a Pali missing here, right? There's a Pali missing here. It explains, without the Pali, I will explain the meaning. It means at the moment of conception, resultant indeterminate roots support to the associated aggregates and the karma produce matter through the force of root condition, right? So it explains about the moment of conception on rebirth. Right? So anyway, we'll be learning about them in detail. Just for the time being, we are just looking at the translation of it. Okay, so back to the Pali. So in Pali, there is one chapter, right? One small chapter called Pañhāvara. I mentioned about this chapter, which comes after the Paccaya-niddesa. So in Pañhāvara, it's the chapter on the questions, right? So all the questions which comes in the Paṭṭhāna, they are included in the Pañhāvara, right? It's just not everything is included in the Pali nowadays. What you see in the Pali, right? It's all included in the Payyala, right? In the it's what you call summarized, right? So in the Pañhāvara, it includes all the questions. So after the Pañhāvara, there is the answers, right? So the rest of the book, rest of the Pali, it's the answers. Yes. Right. So now we have in chapter 7, which is our chapter, right? For Hetu Paccaya. So this is what we learned, right? Yeah. So so these 7, like we learned, we just translated 7 sentences here. From 1 to 7, we translated 7, right? So there were 3 starting from Kusalattika, starting from wholesome phenomena, right? 1, 2, and 3, right? Another 3 starting from akusalo, unwholesome phenomena, and the 7th one starting from abhyakato. So like that, there are 7 answers, right? I mean, if you put it in the context of the answers, question and answers, there are 7 answers, right? So there are 7 answers here, right? So there are 7 answers for this root condition, right? So when it comes to root conditions related to the Kusalattika, there are 7 answers. That's what we just went through. Okay, now we will relate it, right? Connect. So some of the Dhamma friends, they have asked some of the questions in the chat. Personally, I will answer them later or maybe in the next class. Right? First, we'll be learning here, right? So what we really did was, right? So in the Vibhangavara, we learned for the Hetu, for the classification chapter. But we mentioned that we'll be learning another chapter combined with the classification chapter, which is called the enumeration chapter. In Pali, it's called the Paccaya-vara. And the Paccaya-vara, there are two. Again, there are two sub chapters. Single enumeration chapter, which is called Suddha Paccaya-vara, and mixed enumeration chapter called Missaka Paccaya-vara. So we'll be learning this combined, right? These two combined. Scroll down the Pali to see this Suddha Paccaya-vara, single enumerations, right? So we are in this Kusalattika, Pañhāvara, and Paccaya-nuloma. So after these 24 Paccayas, we have the Paccaya-nulomang Paccaya-vara Suddha, right? So this is where we are learning here. So in here, the Suddhang, there is a Pali called Hetuya Satta. That's what we are learning. So the meaning of Hetuya Satta, you see here, Hetuya Satta means in root condition. Satta means in Pali 7. So 7 means there are 7 answers, right? Visajjanani means in Pali 7. So in Hetu, there are 7 answers. That's what it means. Now we understood that this is the single enumeration, right? 7 answers, the single enumeration. So what is done here in the Burmese tradition by Sayadaws is that to explain the analytical states, the ultimate realities in general for all these seven answers, right? So in general, these 7 the analytical states will be given, and then it will be broken down to those 7 answers, right? So first we will be learning on these analytical states, the ultimate realities, which is related to the single enumerations. Right. So yes. So we have here, that's pretty much the same thing that we learned here in the paccayuddesa. So conditioning states, there are 6 roots, Hetu, and condition states, it's the associated aggregates, rooted mind produced matter, and rooted at the moment of conception, karma produced matter, and the 12 forces we'll be learning later, and enumerations, these 7, right? What I really want you all to do here is that I mentioned last week that it is very important and a must to memorize, right? To memorize this section, right? What are the conditioning states, the condition states, conditioning forces, and the number of enumerations. So later in our study, having this detail in your memory is going to be essential. Okay, we'll be learning about them now in a little bit of detail. So we know that for the conditioning states, there are 6 roots: greed, hatred, delusion, non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. So in general, it's 6. But we are learning the Kusalattika, right? Which means that there are wholesome states, unwholesome states, and indeterminate states, which we need to classify, we need to analyze. So in that case, we have to, because of that, we have to analyze those roots as well based on the Kusalattika. So how it is divided, how it is classified, there are 4 kinds of consciousness: wholesome, unwholesome, resultant, and functional. And when you divide it, when you further classify it, the roots based on these consciousness, there are 12 of them, right? So the three roots, alobha, adosa, and amoha, associated with wholesome consciousness, are termed as kusala hetu, wholesome roots. And the 3 roots associated with unwholesome roots, akusala, are termed as unwholesome roots, akusala hetu. The 3 roots, alobha, adosa, amoha, associated with resultant consciousness, vipaka, are termed as resultant consciousness. The 3 roots, alobha, adosa, amoha, associated with functional consciousness, kriya, are termed as kriya hetu, right? So there are wholesome roots, unwholesome roots, then the resultant roots, and the functional roots. Did I miss? No. Yeah. So there are 12 types of roots in total, right? Even though it's 6, there are 12. And further, regarding the resultant roots, the vipaka hetu, it can be further subdivided into course of existence, or we call it during life resultant, called pavatti vipaka roots, and at the moment of conception resultants, which is called the patisandhi vipaka. So if you divide it in this way, there will be 15 roots. So regarding the condition states, so what are those condition states? We know the associated aggregates, rooted mind-produced matter. Now we have this term called rooted here, right? Rooted means it's because this, if you say in general as mind-produced matter, it will capture the whole of the mind-produced matter which are arisen because of the other consciousness as well, right? Which is the ahetuka chittas. So to capture only the rooted mind-produced matter, the mind-produced matter, it's used here. And also the rooted at the mind, at the moment of rooted at the moment of conception, karma-produced matter, right? This is where when the rebirth taking place. So if that is considered here, right? So so the rooted mind-produced matter and rooted at the moment of conception, karma-produced matter, are material form, and the mental phenomena, right? They are the associate aggregates. They are mental phenomena, right? You need to know that as well, right? Basic knowledge. It's called nama and rupa. So regarding the condition states that there is the associate aggregates, we need to further break it down to have a proper understanding. So the first type, there are 3 types of associated aggregates. So the first type is the wholesome associated aggregate. In Pali we call kusala sampayutta kanda. So those are the dhammas which are the wholesome states which are associated with roots, right? And we know in terms of the wholesome karma, the wholesome consciousness, there are 2 rooted consciousness and 3 rooted consciousness, right? So in this 2 rooted consciousness, there will be only 2 roots, alobha and adosa, non-greed and non-hatred. And the 3 rooted consciousness, in the 3 rooted consciousness, there will be 3 roots, which are non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion, alobha, adosa, amoha. So where do these wholesome associated aggregates applicable? They're applicable in the 21 unwholesome consciousness, and the 38 mental factors which are associated with them. Right? So all these dhammas, this 21 wholesome consciousness and 38 mental factors becomes conditioned states from wholesome roots. Next one is the unwholesome associated aggregates called akusala sampayutta khandha. So regarding the unwholesome consciousness, the two types are two-rooted consciousness and single-rooted consciousness, right? So we discussed this about this previously. Two-rooted consciousness are lobha and moha, greed and delusion, and hatred-rooted consciousness. They consist of two roots, hatred and delusion. And delusion-rooted consciousness, it has only one root, which is delusion. So the analytical states are 12 unwholesome chittas and 27 mental factors. Right. So moving into the third type, which is indeterminate associated aggregates, abhyakata sampayutta khandha. So we know in these abhyakata dhammas, indeterminate state, there are rootless consciousness, right? Rootless consciousness, they belong to abhyakata, indeterminate category. But we are discussing the hetu paccaya, the root condition. So those consciousness, the rootless consciousness are not discussed here, not considered here. So the indeterminate states, there are two types, which are resulted indeterminate mental aggregates, right? The vipaka, the 21 resultant consciousness, sahetuka vipaka, right? So there are ahetuka vipaka, rootless resultant consciousness as well, but we'll be only considering the 21 rooted resultant consciousness here and the associated mental factors, which are 38. And there is one more thing which we need to know here. The three abstinences, the virati, they do not occur at the moment of conception, right? So even though there are 38 mental factors given here, but it's not, they do not arise at the moment of conception, right? Yeah, so the second type is called it's the functional indeterminate mental aggregates, which is 17 rooted functional consciousness and 35 mental factors, right? So these are applicable for the Arahantas. Now from the condition states, we discussed in detail about the associated aggregates. And the second type is the matter, three types of mind-produced matter. So mind-produced matter, it's again threefolded. Mind-produced matter due to wholesome consciousness. Now, this type of consciousness, this type of mind-produced matter sometimes is quite obvious, right? So when we meditate, and then because of the concentration, the mind-produced matter which arise become quite obvious, evident, right? So if you have a kind of much fairer complexion, much clarity in your body, because of the meditation, it's because of the mind-produced matter. So regarding the unwholesome consciousness, sometimes it's evident when we have a lot of hatred, sometimes with raga, with attachment, then this is evident, right? The mind-produced matter due to unwholesome consciousness. And the third type is the mind-produced matter due to indeterminate consciousness, right? So indeterminate consciousness, we know it's two-folded, rootless and rooted, but the rooted mind-produced matter due to the indeterminate consciousness are considered here, right? Because the root condition applies only to them. And we need to know another detail that rooted indeterminate consciousness for immaterial resultant consciousness and the death consciousness of arahantas and all at the moment of conception resultant consciousness do not produce mind produce matter. So we know in the case of immaterial resultant consciousness, they do arise in the immaterial plane, which does not have any material. So there is no matter applicable there. And the death consciousness of arahantas, Chuti-citta, it's again mentioned in the in the commentaries that there won't be any matter associated with that. And at the moment of conception resultant consciousness, it will not produce mind produce matter, but it will produce karma produce matter, right? It's not considered as a mind produced matter, right? And also this the mind produced matter due to resultant and functional consciousness usually are not very evident for us, for people like us. I mean, what means that for the arahantas, of course, it can be evident because they will have they will meditate, and because of their meditation, then it will be quite evident of their mind produced matter. But for us, because we have mostly the mind produce the indeterminate consciousness, most of them what we are having are the resultant consciousness, and they are not very evident. The other type of matter is the rooted at the moment of conception karma produced matter. Pali call it Sahajāta patisandhi kammaja rupa. So kammaja rupa, it's in general it's threefolded. So one is the patisandhi kammaja rupa at the moment of conception karma produced matter. The second type is called pavatti kammaja rupa, cause of existence during life karma produced matter. The third one is asanya-satta kammaja rupa, non-percipient beings karma produced matter, right? So I believe you all have learned about these three types when you're learning the Abhidhamma Sangaha. We will be learning in some of the pachayas, we will be learning about all of these types. So so which is related here for us is the patisandhi kammaja rupa. So the patisandhi kammaja rupa, at the moment of conception karma produced matter, there are two, it's two-folded. One is rooted at the moment of conception karma produced matter. Second one is rootless at the moment of conception karma produced matter, right? So among them will be what is applicable in the Hetu Paccaya is the rooted at the moment of conception karma produced matter. Why the other types are not applicable in the root condition is that the asanya-satta, the non-percipient beings, in that realm there is no consciousness. And for the pavatti kammaja rupa, cause of existent karma produced matter, they arise independently to the consciousness. It is not attached, it is not bound to the consciousness. So they arise even though the consciousness is not there, right? Say even during the Nirodha Samapatti for the Arahantas and the Anagami, they will have the pavatti kammaja rupa, right? For us, we'll have pavatti kammaja rupa. They are not bound with the consciousness. So they arise merely as a result of past karma. But regarding the patisandhi citta, right? So patisandhi citta arise because of past karma, and also the matter which arise at the point of the conception, they arise because of karma, plus the consciousness, the mental phenomena, they support the karma produced matter at the moment of conception. So that's why it is bound and associated with the root condition, right? So regarding the conditioning force, we'll be learning it. We'll learn it later. And so the answers, the Visarjana, there are 7. So we need to remember these 7, right? So kusalo kusalasa in brief we call ku, like that. Kusalo abhyakatasa ku bya. Kusalo kusala abhyakatasa ku bya. Akusalo akusalasa aku. Akusalo abhyakatasa aku bya. Akusalo akusala abhyakatasa aku bya. And finally abhyakatasa as bya, right? So the good thing about is that now there are for the paccayas which belongs to the consonant small group, all the Visarjana, the 7 answers are the same, right? The analytical states are of course different, but the answers are similar. So from that, we'll end the session for this evening, right? And we'll share the merits. Share the merits. Akasa Bhummatta Devanaga Mahiddeka Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakkantu Sasanang. Akasatta Sabummatta Devanaga Mahiddeka Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakkantu Desanang. Akasatta Sabummatta Devanaga Mahiddeka Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakkantu Mang Parang. Idamme nati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idamme nati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idamme nati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Imina punyakammena mame bala samagamu satan samagamu hotu yavanibbana pattiya. Yang patantang kusalang tassa anubhavena panino sabbe saddhamma rajassa nyatva dhammang sukhavahang papunantu visuddhaya sukhaya patipattiya asoka manupayasang nibbana sukhamuttamang. Chirang tintatu sadhammo dhamme hontu sagarava sabbe pisanta kalena samma devo pavassatu yatharakkinsu purana surajanu tatevimang raja rakkatu dhammena attanova pajang Imaya dhammanu dhamma patipattiya buddhang pujemi. Imaya dhammanu dhamma patipattiya dhammang pujemi. Imaya dhammanu dhamma patipattiya sanghang pujemi. Adda imaya patipattiya jati jara vyadhi maranam Parimuccissami idamme punyang asavakkaya vahang hotu idamme punyang nibbanassa paccayo hotu mama punya bhagang sabba sattanang bhajemi te sabbe me samang punya bhagang labhantu. Buddha sasanang chirang tithatu. Buddha sasanang chirang tithatu. Buddha sasanang chirang tithatu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
I appreciate for Pandit's teaching. May Pandit be happy and
Sadhu, sadhu.
healthy. Sadhu, sadhu,
For your
sadhu.
support to Sukhihotu.
Thank you very much, Bante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.